Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio on December 17, 1936, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, is the first pope from the Americas and the Southern Hemisphere. Raised in a working-class family of Italian immigrants, he grew up in a modest neighborhood. His early years were shaped by a strong Catholic faith and an awareness of social inequality. Before entering the seminary, he studied chemistry and worked as a technician in a food laboratory. But in 1958, he joined the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, a Catholic order known for intellectual rigor, missionary zeal, and a commitment to social justice. He was ordained a priest in 1969 and eventually became the Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998. As a priest and later a bishop, Bergoglio became known for his humility, deep spirituality, and advocacy for the poor. He chose to live simply, foregoing the opulent bishop's residence to reside in a small apartment. He took public transportation and was often seen walking the streets of Buenos Aires, connecting personally with the people he served. His commitment to the marginalized, his focus on pastoral care, and his ability to bridge theological depth with real-world compassion made him a respected figure in the church. Though he rarely sought the spotlight, his authenticity and dedication stood out. When he was elected pope in 2013, few outside Argentina knew his name. But those who did, knew this: Jorge Bergoglio was a man of the people. And his papacy would reflect that same spirit, one of humility, mercy, and profound humanity. Election and symbolism. On March 13, 2013, white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel. The world learned that Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio had been elected the 266th Pope. He chose the name Francis, a first in papal history, signaling a profound message. The name referred to Saint Francis of Assisi, the 13th century saint known for his embrace of poverty, peace, and care for creation. From his very first appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis broke tradition. Instead of blessing the crowd immediately, he bowed his head and asked the people to pray for him. It was a small act, but deeply symbolic, a reversal of roles that emphasized humility over hierarchy. Francis declined many traditional papal privileges. He chose to live in a modest guesthouse rather than the apostolic palace. He wore simpler garments, drove a used car, and emphasized service over splendor. These choices sent a clear message: the Church must return to the Gospel's core values. His election also reflected a global shift. As the first non-European pope in over a millennium, Francis represented the growing voice of the global South within the Church. His leadership was informed not by European privilege, but by the challenges of the developing world: poverty, inequality, and social unrest. Within days, the world sensed that something was different. Pope Francis was not only a spiritual leader but a symbol of renewal. He called the Church to become less self-referential and more focused on those at the peripheries. His papacy began with gestures, but those gestures spoke volumes. Humility and lifestyle. Pope Francis quickly became known for his unorthodox approach to the papacy. He rejected the trappings of power in favor of simplicity. He declined to use the luxurious papal apartments, instead choosing a modest suite in the Vatican guest house. His daily routines were marked by humility, eating in the common dining hall, carrying his own bag, and paying his own hotel bill after his election. This simplicity wasn't just symbolic, it was deeply personal. Francis had long believed that the Church's power should come not from wealth or ceremony, but from love and service. He often emphasized that the shepherd must smell like the sheep, a powerful image of pastoral closeness to the faithful. The Pope's wardrobe became a metaphor for his values: plain white cassocks without lavish embroidery, a simple silver cross instead of gold. He opted for a Ford Focus over the traditional chauffeured limousine. These decisions resonated with people around the globe, especially in an age of growing distrust toward elite institutions. But his humility extended beyond lifestyle. In speeches and interviews, he often admitted his own flaws and asked for prayers. He called himself a sinner in need of God's mercy, a profound contrast to the distant, authoritative image of past pontiffs. Through these choices, Pope Francis redefined what leadership could look like. He reminded the world that spiritual authority is not about grandeur, but about authenticity. And he proved that the Church's greatest power lies not in its structures, but in its witness to love, humility, and mercy. A church for the poor. From the start of his papacy, Pope Francis made it clear that his Church would stand with the poor. He has called poverty a scandal, and has consistently urged Catholics, and all people, to serve those on the margins. Francis's advocacy is rooted in the Gospel, but it is also personal. He saw firsthand the effects of economic injustice while ministering in the slums of Buenos Aires. These experiences deeply shaped his worldview. As Pope, he speaks not from theory, but from the pain he has witnessed and shared. In his landmark document Evangelii Gaudium, he wrote, "I want a church which is poor and for the poor." This vision goes beyond charity, it calls for justice. Francis has condemned systems that exploit the vulnerable and concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. He's challenged political and business leaders to prioritize human dignity over profit. Pope Francis also draws attention to what he calls spiritual poverty, the loneliness and emptiness that can affect even the wealthy. He insists that true wealth lies not in material goods, but in relationships, compassion, and purpose. He has visited refugee camps, homeless shelters, and prisons, often washing the feet of those society forgets. These actions are not media gestures, but expressions of a consistent ethic. The Church must go to the peripheries. In an era of inequality and division, Pope Francis's message is both ancient and radical. It echoes Christ's call to serve the least of these, not with pity, but with love and solidarity. Interfaith dialogue and peace. Pope Francis has made interfaith dialogue a central part of his mission, believing that building bridges between religions is essential for peace in the modern world. He has reached out to Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, and non-believers with a message of mutual respect, cooperation, and shared humanity. One of the most historic moments of his papacy came in 2019, when he signed the document on human fraternity in Abu Dhabi alongside the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Taib. The document called for peace, tolerance, and the rejection of extremism. It was a powerful declaration that people of different faiths can work together for the common good. Francis has also visited sacred sites of other religions and has been unafraid to enter difficult conversations. Whether at synagogues, mosques, or Buddhist temples, his presence signaled openness, and his words, a desire for unity without erasing differences. He has also worked to heal wounds within Christianity itself, promoting ecumenical relations with Orthodox, Protestant, and evangelical communities. His meetings with Patriarch Bartholomew and other Christian leaders reflect his dream of a more unified church. But interfaith dialogue for Francis isn't just diplomacy. It's a form of peacemaking rooted in love. He believes that dialogue is not about winning arguments, but about recognizing the face of God in the other. In a world fractured by violence, religious conflict, and mistrust, Pope Francis reminds us, peace begins with encounter. And true encounter requires humility, listening, and the courage to love across divides. Environmental advocacy. Pope Francis is perhaps the most environmentally conscious pope in history. In 2015, he released his groundbreaking encyclical Laudato Si, subtitled, On Care for Our Common Home. It was a passionate call to action on climate change, environmental degradation, and the exploitation of natural resources. In Laudato Si, Francis argued that the ecological crisis is not just a scientific or political issue, it is a moral one. He linked the fate of the planet with the fate of the poor, who suffer most from pollution, extreme weather, and the destruction of ecosystems. The Earth, he wrote, is essentially a shared inheritance, whose fruits are meant to benefit everyone. What set Francis apart was the way he framed environmentalism in spiritual terms. He called for an ecological conversion, urging individuals and societies to rethink their relationship with nature, with each other, and with God. This message reached beyond Catholics, influencing scientists, activists, and policymakers around the world. Francis criticized consumerism, waste, and a throwaway culture that treats people and the planet as disposable. He urged nations to act boldly, especially wealthy countries, to reduce emissions, shift to sustainable energy, and protect biodiversity. His voice became especially powerful at international climate conferences, where moral authority was often lacking. Unlike politicians, Pope Francis spoke not for a country, but for future generations. With Laudato Si, he placed the environment at the heart of the Church's mission. He reminded the world that caring for creation is not optional, it's essential to our faith, our survival, and our humanity. Reforming the Church. One of Pope Francis's most challenging and courageous missions has been reforming the Catholic Church from within. From the beginning of his papacy, he made it clear that the Church must be a field hospital, not a fortress, close to the people, especially those on the margins. Francis has prioritized transparency, accountability, and simplicity. He has taken steps to reform the Vatican's complex financial system, aiming to root out corruption and ensure ethical stewardship of resources. He established new financial oversight bodies, appointed lay experts, and pushed for international standards of transparency. The sexual abuse crisis has been a painful and urgent issue. While this tragedy spans decades, Francis has sought to address it with more direct and forceful actions. He implemented new protocols to hold bishops accountable, created systems for reporting abuse, and met with survivors to listen and express remorse. Though critics argue more must be done, his efforts have marked a shift toward greater acknowledgement and action. Francis has also opened conversations about inclusivity in the Church. He's emphasized the importance of listening to lay people, women, and young people. His synods have encouraged open dialogue on complex issues like divorce, LGBTQ+ Catholics, and the role of women in the Church. He insists that the Church must walk with people in their real-life struggles, offering mercy more than judgment. In his vision, reform is not about abandoning doctrine but rediscovering the heart of the gospel: compassion, humility, and service. For Pope Francis, a renewed Church must reflect the love of Christ in both word and action. Legacy and closing reflections. As Pope Francis continues to lead the Catholic Church into the third decade of the 21st century, his legacy is already taking shape. He has reshaped the papacy, not through grand proclamations, but through a consistent witness of humility, compassion, and moral courage. His emphasis on mercy, dialogue, and care for creation has challenged both the Church and the world to reconsider what true leadership looks like. Francis has opened doors to conversations long silenced. He has addressed issues of climate change with bold clarity and Laudato Si, urging the world to care for our common home. He has called for solidarity with migrants, dialogue between faiths, and inclusion of those often pushed to the margins. He reminds us that the Church is not a fortress, but a field hospital, meant to heal wounds, not deepen divisions. His critics argue he moves too fast, or too slow. But Francis remains rooted in discernment, always pointing back to the gospel, to Christ's love for the least among us. Whether or not one is Catholic, the example of Pope Francis carries universal meaning. In an age of noise and division, he offers a quiet, firm voice for peace. In a time of inequality, he stands with the poor. And in a world thirsting for meaning, he invites all of us, believer or not, to lead with conscience, humility, and hope. As he often reminds us, the measure of greatness is not how many serve you, but how many you serve.